our first segment of Breakfast Show with the press review, and we are joined in the studio by Mr. Mohamed Sheta, media expert. Hello, sir, and good morning.
A very good morning to you and to all your viewers.
Thank you. And first, we're going to start with Al Masri Al-Yom newspaper, where President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will meet with Hungarian Prime Minister on Wednesday to promote bilateral relations and economic ties. Viktor Orban, along with a delegation of top government officials and business executives, were received by Prime Minister Sharif Ismail on Cairo International Airport late on Tuesday. The visit aims at promoting cooperation with Egypt in all fields, and we have more in the following report.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban arrived in Cairo on Tuesday for a three-day visit to promote bilateral relations and economic ties with Egypt. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is set to hold talks with visiting Hungarian Prime Minister, who kicked off a three-day visit to Egypt. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail will also meet with his Hungarian counterpart for talks which are expected to cover means of boosting bilateral relations and a number of international issues. Ahead of the visit, Ismail held a cabinet meeting to discuss the Egyptian-Hungarian relations. The meeting reviewed cooperation agreements to be signed during the visit in the field of transportation and car manufacturing, in addition to projects in the Suez Canal Economic Zone. During his visit, the Hungarian Prime Minister, along with the Ministers of International Cooperation, Sahar Nasr, and Trade and Industry Minister Tariq Qabil, inaugurated a meeting of the Egyptian-Hungarian Business Forum on Wednesday. The Hungarian Premier is heading a high-ranking official delegation and representatives from major companies.
And we have more about this news with Mr. Mohamed Sheta. What's the importance of the visiting delegation of Hungary and what they're going to add?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because I mean, it's definitely not going to harm to have the Hungarian president visiting Egypt, but we know that the GDP of Hungary is more or less divided to 65% to services, 31% to industry, and only 3.4% to agriculture. So Hungary is very well known for attracting European companies from inside Europe to do their services, their call centers and everything from there. So I'm not really sure how the Egyptian economy will be able to benefit from such a high-ranking business delegation from Hungary, but it's not going to harm. I mean, let's see what kind of agreements they will be signing, and then we will see. I mean, they have a very nice Formula 1 race taking place in Budapest every year, and it's one of the most well-liked destinations actually for motorsport fans. And of course, tourism-wise, also Hungary is well known inside Europe. But I'm not really sure how the Egyptian economy will really benefit from such a cooperation. But maybe I'm wrong.
We'll see.
We'll see.
And moving to Al Shuru newspaper, where the Palestinian embassy in Cairo said on Tuesday that upon directives from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egyptian authorities decided to open Rafah border crossing in both directions for 4 days. This comes following the bilateral talks held between President al-Sisi and his Palestinian counterpart recently in Cairo. The border crossing will be open for urgent humanitarian cases and for the ones bearing residency papers or visas. The embassies thanked the Egyptian government for its efforts aiming to relieve the suffering of the Palestinian people, and we have more in the following report.
Egypt opens its borders with the Gaza Strip for 4 days starting Wednesday, allowing Palestinians to enter and leave the isolated coastal strip ahead of the Muslim holiday of Ramadan. The Rafah border crossing between the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip will be open in both directions. The opening of the crossing is seen as a humanitarian gesture by Egypt ahead of the Muslim holiday fasting month of Ramadan. The opening is aimed at serving humanitarian and emergencies cases. The move would be the second opening in as many months after Egypt shuttered the border for 85 days. Egypt has kept its border with Gaza mostly sealed since Hamas seized control of the strip in 2007.
And we're going to shed light more on the opening of the Rafah border with Mr. Mohamed Sheta. What's your opinion about opening for the crossing on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and why we don't open this border forever? What's the problem with this?
Well, I think first of all, it's a very good step that we opened this in order to, like the report said, to add some relief to the Palestinians traveling between Egypt and the Palestinian cities. Of course, Israel would love to Egypt opening the borders forever, because this would mean that they would have less problems inside the Palestinian territories, and consequently also inside the Israeli politics. And I think this is one of the reasons why Egypt is not opening the borders, is that they want to send a message to Israel that you need to solve your problems inside between the Israeli parties and the Palestinian parties.
But the Palestinians are paying the price for this, because
actually,
those who are passing are those who are ill or wounded, or
of course those who are ill or injured or needs medical treatment should not suffer from that. But nevertheless, of course, also Hamas and Fatah and all the other Palestinian politicians over the past couple of decades, they did not really contribute a lot to really achieve a significant and touchable solution for the Israeli-Palestinian problems. Of course, Israel was very stubborn in many things. The fact that Lieberman just became the new defense minister is definitely not going to add any significant development to the already stagnating peace process. So let's hope that they will sit on one table, and really try to solve the problems they have. The refugees issue in the whole Middle East region, not only on the Palestinian territories, but also what we have seen in Syria and other Middle Eastern countries, needs also to be tackled during the meeting of President El-Sisi with the Hungarian President Orban. Because actually, I forgot to mention in the first at the first discussion we had that Hungary was not very helpful in receiving the refugees who came from Syria and other countries. Actually, they established a fence which got them lots of criticism, and I hope that President El-Sisi will really also tackle this issue, because what they did at that time was really something unacceptable. And we've seen some pictures of this very infamous Hungarian journalist who picked one of the refugees at that time. So I hope that this will also be...
They were very aggressive in dealing with the refugees.
Extremely aggressive. So this is why, I mean, you're aggressive with the Middle Eastern refugees, but it's nice to do business with the Middle Eastern people and the Middle Eastern economies.
I don't care about the humanitarian cases, I care about the money. This is their message.
Obviously. So hopefully that Egypt can make a point during those bilateral talks and really send a clear message to that.
Moving to El Masri Al-Yawm newspaper, where 5 soldiers were killed and 5 others were injured when 2 improvised explosive devices targeted an army patrol in Sinai Peninsula. According to hospital sources in North Sinai, the attack took place on Al-Arish Sheikh Zouaid Road. The sources added that the blast also wounded 5 soldiers who sustained injuries or bruises, fractures and abrasions in the body. Still, until this moment, there is no stability in Sinai. Of course, the military is exerting great effort, but why they are not controlling Sinai, and every now and then we find a major attacks by whoever militant groups in Sinai. I don't want to mention their Daesh because we don't know actually.
Yes. Well, you know how big Sinai is, so it's definitely going to take a while to really clean it up completely. And of course, the structure of Sinai, the social structure we have in Sinai, doesn't make it much easier. This reminds me of an article which was published, I think, in the Washington Post 2 or 3 days ago, where Obama urged the Congress to allow the United States to, I think, give Egypt 700 or 800 armored vehicles for combating terrorism without connecting it to some social or some aids or to the political scene in Egypt. and the political situation. So this shows us that not only Egypt is very interested in fighting all those terrorists on the Sinai and around Egypt as well, but also, of course, other countries like the United States, for example, because they know if we don't fight terrorism where they have their main roots, like on the Sinai, for example, or in Fallujah, or in any other parts, I think this will also have a international impact.
But the military is not supposed to fight the terrorism, because the military troops, they are only trained to fight other troops, and they go to wars. But the militants have their own tactics,
yes,
which should be where we should have other. For example, commandos and other brigades or bastions or battalions to fight. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean, but
I don't know whose job is this.
Yes,
maybe
yes.
the
I think
Ministry of Interior.
It's a common job between the police forces and the army forces, because of course you know that the situation on the Sinai is a very delicate situation. This is one thing. The other thing is their training is not really a training of normal criminals, actually. I mean, they have heavy machinery, and I don't think that the police forces has the heavy machinery to fight such terrorist groups.
I know, but they have their own techniques, which the military is not used to that.
Well, this is what the military experts call asymmetric combats or asymmetric fights, you know. And I think it's only natural that any country like Egypt, or even look at what's happening these days in Fallujah. I mean, the army the Iraqi forces are fighting them with military forces as well. Not only with the Iraqi forces, but obviously they also have some assistance from the American forces as well, because I think 2 or 3 American military experts died during the past couple of days. So I think it's very important that you just send all the forces you have in order to combat them, because like I said, I don't think that the police forces would be enough to fight and combat those militias or those terrorist groups on the Sinai.
Okay, from El Wafd newspaper, we read Egypt set to receive the first Mistral-class landing helicopter dock worship from France on Thursday. The inauguration of the Mistral, which will raise the Egyptian flag and said from Francis to Egypt, will be attended by Defense Minister Sidi Sobhi and his French counterpart. The LHD worship is said to be named after the late President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Earlier this month, 170 Egyptian crewmen sailed in the week-long training operation to familiarize themselves with the ship. France now tops the list of countries who have signed military supply agreements with Egypt during the term of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, after a May agreement that witnessed the signing of a series of bilateral military cooperation deals. Why we are paying lots of money for military equipments, for armored vehicles, for helicopters, and why?
Well, again, this is a very good question. I think the situation, maybe we could have been investing those money in different sectors, for example, in education or in infrastructure. But I think probably the government or the political decision makers maybe have some other insights which we as the normal media guys do not have. Nevertheless, of course, it's very important to also to show strength and the power you have at a certain level. Of course, those warships are quite expensive. They take lots of money. Nevertheless, I think it could be helpful in combating terrorism on the mid and long term. What I'm not really happy about maybe is the names they are choosing for those warships. I think it's, of course, we have lots of maybe they are just copying the trend or following the trend like we have in the United States, where all the warships have names of USS Cole or other politicians or former presidents. I think we should have called this warship Egypt 1 or Egypt 2, because I think this is probably not the first and this is probably not the last warship Egypt is going to buy. So I think we should have named them either cities, Egyptian cities, or just simply Egypt.
Why you don't like?
Well, actually, I think because at a certain point you will have to also name the others, because I mean if you if you name this worship Gamal Abdel Nasser, then the second one will be Sadat, and the third one will be Mubarak, then the fourth one will be...
No, we don't have Mubarak at all on the list.
Well, actually, you never know, because, I mean, it's part of the history. You can't really delete the history. I mean, it's part of the history, just like Abdel Nasser. I mean, Abdel Nasser has lots of fans.
No, Abdel Nasser is a leader, Sadat is a war fighter, and he's also a leader, but Mubarak is... removed by a revolution.
Well, then you will have someone here who will come and tell you, well, we want a worship called Morsi as well, because he's also one of the previous presidents, you know. So I think maybe we should have just called them Egyptian city names, or just Egypt, you know.
You're right, you have a point. Mr. Mohamed Sheta, media expert, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to